Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Shroyer, a career positioning strategist, professor, and someone who spent a lot of time thinking about what it really means to grow in a world that just won't stop changing. Welcome to the Technically Human podcast. This podcast is about navigating your career, your identity, and your next chapter in a world that's shaped by AI, technology, and constant change. Here, we're going to talk about real stuff. We're going to talk about career pivots, uncertainty, reinvention, and mostly how to stay grounded in who you are while everything around you evolves. Are you ready to go? Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Technically Human podcast. I want to share with you in this solo episode some insight about career advice that is no longer helpful in 2026. So, I have 5 different aspects or points I want to cover with you and share a little bit more information so that if you are one of those individuals out there seeking a job, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, you have insight as to what is going to help you versus hurt you in your job search. So, the number one item that I want to talk about is applying everywhere. Now, what people have done in the past and what people are still doing, unfortunately, is when they are looking for a job, they end up to applying everything everywhere that they find. And so they might have hundreds and hundreds of applications out. And yes, you do need a lot of applications put out there in order for you to hear back and get an interview. And right now in May 2026, it's typically one, maybe two interviews for every 100 applications that you file. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't apply a lot of places, but you have to be very strategic. And it's not just throwing your resume across everything. And I know that one thing that individuals do, especially when they are trying to get unemployment, is they will apply for anything and everything. And typically, not typically, let's say individuals who want to keep their unemployment and not find employment, a lazy way out is apply for jobs that are either too high for them or too low for them, that they're overqualified for or underqualified for. But what you want to make sure you are doing is that you're not submitting as many applications as possible. You want to make sure that you are positioned correctly for the role that you're posting for. And one thing that happens a lot of times is that when a woman looks at a job description and they feel that they match maybe 50, 60%, even sometimes 70% of the job description, they think, well, I don't match that other 30, 40, 50%. So they won't pick me. And they decide to continue in their search and look and not even apply. Men traditionally apply for it, even if they don't meet 50% of it, or if they only meet 60%, whatnot. So those women are passing it by, those men are applying, they're in the pool, and they're actually getting chosen for interviews and they're getting the job. So we need to make sure that you're looking at those positions that you have really good qualifications towards. And even if you're missing some of the qualifications there, is that something that you can learn on the job? Is that something that you have the flexibility to grow into and that you could prove yourself when you get the foot in the door? And you can talk to that in the interview. Or maybe there's things that you can do even prior to or as you're interviewing that show that you're taking that initiative for the job. So please don't think just because you don't match 100% of the job, especially you ladies out there, that means that you can't post for the job. You absolutely can post for it. Another big thing that is related to this about making sure you're not applying everywhere is making sure that you are networking, and hopefully you're not cringing when you hear that you are being as visible as possible. Some individuals, and we'll talk about LinkedIn here shortly, but some people see or think about LinkedIn or hear about LinkedIn and they start to cringe just as much as they might when they hear the word networking. And when they think about LinkedIn, they're like, I have my picture up there and I have my resume information up there. That's not enough. is not enough anymore. You need to make sure that you are being proactive, that you're taking the initiative, that you're being as visible as possible. And that's not just having a profile anymore. That's making sure that you're posting, you're sharing with your thoughts and different things like that. So again, we'll talk about LinkedIn here shortly. That's another item that I have on my list, but also thinking about the timing and the alignment that you have with the industry and with the type of role and what that looks like. I will say blind applications, which are basically you're throwing your name in the hat, you don't know anybody at the company, you have not talked to anybody. That is going to lead to burnout really quickly. So you have to make sure that you're bringing in that networking component, that you're building relationships and that you're making connections. Sometimes those won't lead anywhere, and that's okay. Other times, those can end up leading to places that you never could have imagined. So, one thing I want to make sure that you understand, so applying everywhere is not a strategy for job searching anymore. A couple things that I want to make sure that you do is that you are looking and you're setting up your alerts for within 24 to 48 hours, depending on what the filtering is, that you're setting up job alerts so that when new job positions come up that align with the filter, the search filter that you have, that you are able to customize, that you're able to uh, upgrade and apply for those jobs as soon as possible. A lot of individuals who apply within that first couple days that a job is out there are being looked at a lot quicker than if something's been out there for a few weeks or more. And I will tell you also, and again, I know we're going to get to LinkedIn, but make sure that when you see that number of who applied on LinkedIn, that you keep top of mind. That number is merely the number of people who clicked to check out that job, to go to the website, likely of the company, and read more about it. How many people or how many of you yourselves have gone into a job posting once maybe you clicked out of LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever you were, you go into that company's website, you read more about it, or you have some more information there, or you start to fill out the application and it's asking you to list every single freaking thing and you end up quitting because you back out because it's too much information, or maybe you think more about it and you're like, it's not worth my time to apply for this. So just because LinkedIn says that X number of people applied, it does not know how many people not only went to that website for that company, but went through with that process. So please keep that in mind. The other thing is make sure that you are targeting your applications. You're positioning yourself for those roles that are best aligned with your skills, your expertise, all of those types of things, your strengths, all of that. And then also making sure that you're building upon, like I mentioned before, your connections, your networking, you're building those relationships that it may just turn into a friendship, right? And there may be opportunities there as well. You never know who somebody else might know. The second item I want to cover is that your resume is not just a job history document. Now, I can tell you from my years upon years, so it's been 12 years now that I've done career coaching and lending more into strategy now. And the number of resumes, I've looked at over a couple hundred resumes, and I can't tell you the number of times I've seen people list like 20 years or 15 years of different jobs and enter each of those jobs listing, here's what I did, here's the responsibilities that I had. And some individuals have what are their accomplishments and things like that. But know that it is not just a list of responsibilities and tasks. You need to leverage that document that is part of your face when they open that door, when you're applying for a job role. You're positioning yourself in a great way, that you are talking about outcomes. What kind of impact did you make? What was the ROI for the company by having you in that role? Who cares? Maybe you raised sales by X%. Who cares? What did it help? How did it benefit the organization or the company or whatever that might be? You need to make sure that you're very clear in how you're telling your story, and you need to be strategic about telling your story. And I will tell you on the resume, the most important parts of your resume are if you take a piece of paper and you go and you fold it It's that top fold of your resume. So it's going to be, yes, you have space for your header and your name, and you don't want it too large. You have your contact information, and typically you have a headline of some sort. And then you also have your professional summary. And your professional summary is basically think about if you are if you're going to read a book or you're going to read a paper online, there's the abstract for the paper online. For the book, what are you typically doing? If I'm going through a bookstore and I'm pulling up a book, I'm oops, opening up that inside cover and I'm reading more about it. And if I'm interested, I might go in the back part and read more about it. Now, this specific one has more on the back side that I can read about. So, thinking about your professional summary is if that's the only thing that hiring manager or that recruiter read, then you want to make sure that they read that and they're like, yes, bring this person in. Or they read it and they're like, oh, that's triggering me to read a little bit more to see, does this person align with what we're looking for? Is this intriguing to bring this person in? So even though the applicant tracking systems or the ATS matter, and we want to make sure some people talk about beating the ATS, you want to make sure that your keywords are aligning and that you're able to get through and you're coming up on the top list of what comes through. You still have humans who are making decisions. So when those applications come through, and depending on the size of the company, and maybe a smaller company doesn't necessarily use a lot of functionality for an ATS or they don't have an ATS, and there are people looking at all of the resumes that are coming through. You want to make sure that you are drawing attention that you are the right person for that role to those people. If it is an ATS system and it's kicking out in one of the systems that I used to bring in adjuncts as a professor, is it showed us a match, a percentage. So you said you wanted these things in the job description. Mary Sue comes in and she matches 87%. And so it's feeding me back and then it's giving me a prioritized list. And so I'm going to look at those higher percentages first, right? I want the closest match that I can to the job description. And then I'm going to make a decision from there. Okay, I have these 12 people or these 14 people or whatever that number might be. Maybe I'm just looking at the top five for now and I'm starting to go through those and see, okay, now I want to get to know them a little bit better. What can I learn about them from starting to read that first half of the first fold of that page on their resume? So making sure that your resume isn't just a job history document, but it's a strategic document and it's telling your story and it's helping not just to list responsibilities and tasks, but to shout out the outcomes that you have. What is the story that you have to tell? How is it positioning? How does it align you to be a great fit for this role? And to trigger that recruiter or that hiring manager to say, yes, let's pull this one. Let's look at this one a little bit closer. So, the third item I want to talk about today is LinkedIn. And I get very hyped up about LinkedIn. A lot of you may know that. A lot of you may be even watching pieces of this or this whole thing on LinkedIn. But let me say this, and I'll repeat it as well. LinkedIn is no longer optional. So a lot of people used to think that LinkedIn was just a resume repository. And you just throw your pieces of your resume in there. You pop up a profile photo if you even do that. And then hopefully you just lean back and you invite the job seekers to come in or the companies to come in and find you. The reality is that visibility matters. And if you create your profile or if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you're not being visible because most individuals who are in the world of business will, after going to a conference or even while they're at a conference, or I had a connection call recently with somebody and I said, let me find you on LinkedIn and connect. He goes, oh, I already sent you a connection request. Most of these professionals are going to seek you out on LinkedIn to build that connection, to watch what you say, watch what you do. It's a way for you to stay visible in the world of business, to share insight from your specialty, from your industry, from the things that you're doing professionally and a little bit personally too. And most of the time, also, recruiters or hiring managers are going to look you up on LinkedIn. They might get your resume in, somebody may tell them about you, and they're going to pull you up on LinkedIn. So you absolutely want to make sure that you don't just have created a LinkedIn profile in college. I hear so many adults that I work with in my career coaching business that they created one in college and they haven't touched it since. You are likely spending time scrolling TikTok or scrolling Instagram. Why can't you do something on LinkedIn once or twice a week? That's all I'm asking. Stay top of mind to others, especially if you are in that job search mode. You want to make sure what are some of the things that I can post, that I can share, that I can feature on my profile so that you're staying top of mind and people are seeing you in their news feeds. And a lot of times I tell professionals this when we're working on their LinkedIn profile, optimizing it. And I feel like for a moment they have that, their mind is blown. And they're like, I didn't even think about that. I thought all I had to do was have a profile. But the way that you stay visible isn't just having that profile, but it's basically doing something with it and enhancing your visibility with it. Now, if you don't have LinkedIn yet, or you haven't touched your LinkedIn profile in a while, let's get to it. I have some tools within the community. So if you visit careercompassusa.com, you can learn about Compass, the community, and there are tons of different tools and resources. And we talk about LinkedIn and how to help you to build up. And there's even a free checklist for your LinkedIn profile and using LinkedIn. So make sure that you are leveraging that and helping with your visibility, and definitely don't think that you don't need one. You don't need one of those profiles at all. The fourth item I want to talk about is that, yes, AI is changing the landscape. If you have listened to any episodes even prior to this, you know that AI is absolutely changing the world of work and the things that we do and how we think and what we do. And you also know that human skills matter, and they matter so much more. And even though we talk about tech a lot of times and this AI aspect in a lot of these episodes on the podcast, a lot of it comes down to you need a human and you need that humanity. So, a lot of people originally, when we started talking more heavily in the world of work about AI, it was AI is going to replace everybody. Nobody's going to have a job anymore. Doomsday, right? It's going to wipe all these jobs out. The reality is that AI is going to change the workflows that we have. It's going to change our expectations. I've already heard this in so many different episodes, especially with guests that we've had on the podcast. And they talk about how we have to change our way of thinking and we have to look at and reflect how can we leverage these tools to continue to be better, but that it's not always, and I know you've heard the quote before about AI is not going to take your job. It's people who know AI who's going to take your jobs. And even one of the last episodes that I recorded, we were talking about AI and how if individuals didn't learn how to prompt and leverage AI, then they were likely going to be left behind. So those individuals, those professionals who figure out how to adapt, especially strategically, you're going to stand out. So even if you feel like you're so behind, nobody is an AI expert. And this is a quote that actually came from the guest that I recorded with just recently for an episode that's going to come out later. No one is an AI expert. If somebody tells you they're an AI expert, they're a liar, because AI is this huge pool of information. And you might be an expert or really focused on one specific piece of AI, but the likelihood that you can encompass this big blue ocean of what AI is, quite frankly, ridiculous. So you want to make sure, whatever level you are in your organization, or if you're a job seeker out there, that you start dipping your toe into that big blue ocean, taking baby steps and starting to learn a little bit about AI. And then you start to learn a little bit more and you get that confidence and you get that knowledge that's going to support you in the workforce. It's also important when we think about it, communication. And what's really interesting is I talked to several university students recently and asked about what are some of the skills that you want to work on. And this was specific to some internships. And I said, okay, let's pick 3 skills. What are 3 skills we want to work on in this internship over the next few months? I would say 9 times out of 10, students say communication. And I say, pause. What does that mean? What kind of communication? Where do we want to go with that? Because there's so many different aspects that relate to communication. So we have to be very focused and think through what are those skills we want to build? What are the skills do we need to work on? And then how do we do that? Because you don't want to be too general. We want to think about how can we practice judgment, decision making, so critical in the world of work. And even if we have some AI tool or system, it might make decisions, we might program it to help make decisions, but at the end of the day, it's on us, right? As individuals, when we need to look at that and we are driving the bus there, we're leveraging AI as a tool, but we are driving the bus. So we need to be able to step back and make decisions on what's happening. Adaptability and flexibility are so important. And then trust. There's so many things that come back to the foundation of trust, and so many authors I've read and people I've talked to that talk about that foundation of trust. And I can't tell you that trust can be built through systems, through technology. It's the people that have to bring that to the table. So that is number 4 about AI and the importance of human skills. Very last but not least, number 5, I want to talk about loyalty alone does not protect your career. So I'll tell you a little story. Back when I was interviewing managers for my dissertation research, and this was around 2012 when I was doing the biggest part of my interviews for the research. One of the individuals that I researched, and I love this piece in my dissertation, my final paper, but we talked about loyalty. And he talked about how there's really, I can't remember the exact words of it's not that loyalty doesn't exist, but it's not, if it does exist, it's not really the same. And he talked about his father worked for the post office and he worked there loyally for all of these years and retired through the post office. And you don't see people like that anymore. A lot of people think that if you work hard, that a company is going to take care of you. And some of you may be laughing at this point in the episode. The reality is that you need to learn resilience. And for those of you who have been laid off, who have sought a job change for one reason or another, you understand that resilience. If you have been in a job role where you were challenged in so many different ways, you understand how important it was to build that resilience. And you need to make sure, again, this goes back to visibility. You need to make sure that you're visible, that you are adaptable and flexible, and that you're building relationships. I was in the same company for 27 years, and for so long, I felt like I was doing that, and I was doing that really well. And one day, out of the blue, I was laid off. So then you start to look at things and you hear more and more stories of this happening. And it does make you pause and reflect on, is there such thing as loyalty anymore? A concept that's talked about in a lot of research, even thinking about loyalty as psychological safety and psychological contract that you might have. And thinking about like the employee might be loyal, but is the company loyal? And vice versa, those different pieces. And so a lot of employees think that they still have that mindset, and maybe it's an older generation thing, but if I work really hard and I do whatever I need to do, and some people even think it's the long hours and the taking on more and more that's getting them to burnout, and this company's going to take care of you. And sorry, not sorry to say that's not true. You need to be able to pivot and to change and to take care of you and focus on you and figure out what does that look like and what's the right thing, and not be tied to that any organization would owe you or that you would owe them. And so really taking care of yourself. So let me go back over these 5 that I talked about. And again, this is career advice that no longer works in 2026. So the first one was applying everywhere is no longer a strategy. So you have to be very, I don't want to say the word strategic because I just said it, but you have to be very strategic and very specific and position and really target where do you want to apply. And you also need to make sure that you're bringing in that relationship building, that building connections and things like that. Number 2 is your resume is not just a job history document. So making sure that you are thinking not just about responsibilities and tasks that you had, but what was the impact you had? So as you go through and look at your resume, one thing I challenge my clients to is we look at a bullet point underneath your work experience for your resume. And you say, I did this, whatnot. And I say, who cares? Who cares? Why does the company care? What impact did you make? How did it help? What did it solve? And thinking about how do we integrate some of those quantitative accomplishments and how do we make sure that when a human sees this, that you're going to stand out and they're going to decide to take the next step with you. Number 3 was LinkedIn is no longer optional. It's not just for your online resume and you put it on there and you walk away. It is an absolutely critical tool for you to connect, to build your network. It's a great opportunity, especially in this virtual world, to make connections with individuals that you may have never thought that you would be able to connect with before, especially if you never see them in person, and being able to put yourself out there. And this goes back to that visibility message again. Number 4 was AI is changing the landscape, but human skills matter more. So AI is not going to replace everyone. What are some of the human aspects and skills that we need to make sure that we are still relevant in this world that has AI in it? And then number 5 was loyalty alone does not protect careers, and really rethinking about what does the whole concept of loyalty mean and what do we need to make sure we do. And it goes back to that visibility again, building relationships and being resilient in our careers. So with all of this, the goal isn't to, I don't want to scare you. I don't want you to panic. And I don't want you to think that you have to constantly reinvent yourself. The goal is really to understand the rules of the current environment. What is going on today in our world of work, and how are we going to navigate them even more strategically, where we're not going to lose ourselves in the process, that we're going to still have and recognize who we are and what's important to us, and all of those skills, experience, and strengths that we bring to the table and that make us that rock star and that makes us the person that somebody would want to hire, bring into their organization, bring into their team, and bring into that role that they have available. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Technically Human podcast, and I will see you on the next episode.
Thanks again for listening to the Technically Human podcast. If you are navigating a career shift or you're just feeling like something needs to change, remember you do not have to figure it out alone. You can find tools, strategy, and support inside the Compass membership. Learn more at www.careercompassusa.com. And if this episode helped you in any way, sharing it with someone else might help them too. I'll see you in the next episode.